Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again to plunge into some complex topics and pull out the insights that matter for you. You know, there's this feeling lately, globally, sort of tension in the air. Things feel like they're shifting. And just recently we saw reports, air raid sirens in southeastern Poland. Think about that for a second. Air raid warnings in a NATO country. I mean, initially that's jarring. It's deeply alarming, right? But what happens if it keeps going? If it becomes, I don't know, almost regular, that shock, it can fade. It could even become disturbingly sort of normal. And that path from alarm to maybe routine, that's really caught our attention. It's a big part of what we're looking at today. So our deep dive is into a really fascinating and sometimes, let's be honest, unsettling perspective on all this geopolitical tension. We're looking at a specific YouTube video excerpt. It's titled Kushim by Dziś Skupić Wyjścia Live from the channel Krzysztof Jackowski Official. And this source gives what it calls a visionary take, specifically on the current situation, Poland's role, its future, maybe.
Exactly. And our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack what's being said. These observations, these predictions, we want to get a handle on the anxieties, the speculations, what concerns are bubbling up from this particular viewpoint about the region. And it's really important we stress this. We're here to analyze the content. What ideas are being presented? What might they imply about current fears, current narratives? We're not endorsing these claims, not at all, or refuting them for that matter. We're just examining them, holding them up to see what they might reflect about the broader conversation, especially for you, our listeners, who follow these topics closely.
Absolutely. So as we go through this quite intriguing material, we'll hit several key themes. We'll start with this idea, this normalization of threat. How does it connect to questions about, say, NATO's effectiveness? Then we'll look at propaganda, how narratives get built. And then we dive into some really specific, pretty dramatic visions for Poland. Things like rocket incidents, internal chaos.
Yeah, even potential financial restrictions and this really striking idea of a multi-pronged strategy. Something about Putin's plan to dismantle Poland, but politically, economically.
It's quite a journey into the anxieties of right now. So yeah, let's dig in.
Okay, one of the first things from the source that really jumps out, makes you stop and think, is this idea that Poland, a NATO member, might be slowly kind of getting used to hearing air raid sirens, seeing drone interceptions maybe as just daily life. The visionary calls this scandalous, not just locally, but as a threat to Poland's international image, its business reputation even. Like the whole idea of national security is being subtly eroded psychologically.
And what's really sharp about that observation, regardless of where it comes from, is how it taps into something we already understand about long-term stress. When people get desensitized to warnings, you get this thing called alert fatigue. It doesn't just lessen the punch of real threats when they happen, but it raises these deeper questions about, well, national resilience.
Right. If normal starts to include, bits of conflict here and there, it changes everything. Your relationship with security, with being prepared, it's a kind of psychological warfare, almost, even if no one intends it that way. Subtle, but really impactful.
And that perceived normalization, the idea of alerts becoming just noise. The source links it directly to a critique of NATO. It says the alliance is seen as a shell. The Polish word used is wydmuszka, like something hollowed out and not unanimous. And it brings up Mr. Trump comments he made about a mistake with drones. It's basically asking, isn't it, if a NATO country is getting used to sirens, what does that actually say about the security guarantee NATO is supposed to offer?
Well, this specific critique coming from this particular source, it actually echoes some ongoing debates in, strategic circles. Calling NATO a shell might sound extreme, sure, but it reflects real anxieties about the alliance's speed, its unity inside, its ability to handle modern threats that aren't just tanks rolling across borders.
Hybrid threats, yeah.
Exactly. Like the mention of Trump and drones that touches on worries about who carries the weight, the political commitment of members. It mirrors a feeling some analysts have voiced that the whole security setup we've had since the Cold War is under serious strain. Nationalism, new kinds of threats. So the visionary here is kind of voicing a concern that I think many people listening might recognize from more, let's say, conventional analysis.
So it's not just the sirens themselves, it's the story being spun around them. The source talks about an alarming narrative being built up in Poland by the media, by politicians. And the point made is that this isn't just informing people about danger. It's seen as actively, maybe deliberately, getting them used to extreme situations, even in peacetime. It suggests a kind of psychological shift, maybe an unsettling one, happening across the country.
That's a really crucial point. It takes us into things like cognitive warfare, strategic messaging. The visionary's observation makes us ask, is this narrative just informing? Or
Yeah.
is it maybe subtly conditioning people? When media, especially if it's state-influenced, constantly frames things a certain way, it can normalize reactions. It can even shape public opinion for future actions before anything happens. History has examples, unfortunately, of populations being gradually prepped for conflict through these sustained emotional narratives. The danger, as the source hints, is when the line blurs between real threat assessment and, well, maybe a kind of national psychological mobilization, even if it's not planned that way.
That blurring,
Mm.
that's really key, especially when the visionary gets into these very specific, very dramatic predictions. Let's start with one called a sensation in a small village. The vision is of media suddenly showing up in some empty area near a little Polish village, filming something big. It's linked to provocations, things that happen at night but then explode into public view during the day,
Yeah.
causing a huge stir.
Yeah, that imagery, media swarming an empty place after some nighttime provocation. It's quite evocative, isn't it? It suggests an event that's maybe crafted, staged perhaps, or a revelation timed for maximum impact.
Designed for public consumption.
Exactly, to maybe stir up public anger, justify some policy move, or even, false flag type of thing. The night-to-day aspect adds this theatrical layer, makes it hit harder. It really highlights how powerful controlling the story around an event can be, especially when the first reports are confusing or murky.
And building right on that, there's this chilling prediction about rockets. The source sees 3 rockets being prepared for Poland. But here's the detail. Only one is expected to actually arrive or do damage.
Okay.
And what's really weird is the description of its path, roundabout or semicircular. This path, the claim goes, will mean people are sure at first where it came from, but then doubt creeps in. And that could lead to a huge scandal when the real origin is revealed.
Wow. Okay, that prediction is loaded because it's explicitly tied to setting the stage for military intervention. That roundabout trajectory, that's the key part. It's meant to make attribution hard.
Plausible deniability.
Precisely. In today's information environment, uncertainty about who attacked can be even more destabilizing than the attack itself. If you go from certainty to doubt, you create this vacuum. Conflicting stories rush in, mistrust grows internally, internationally, and the scandal, when the true origin comes out, that could be twisted into a reason, a casus belli, to get involved deeper in the conflict, whether that revelation is even true or just more manipulation.
It's like information warfare, where truth is just another tool.
A strategic lever, yeah. A casualty used to move things along.
So besides these external, maybe staged threats, the visionary also sees serious trouble inside Poland. Talks about a mess, a wave of sabotage starting within the country. And crucial point, massive confusion about who's behind it. Is it Belarus? Russia? Could it even be Ukraine?
Yeah, that speaks directly to the playbook of hybrid warfare, those gray zone tactics we hear about. The ambiguity, not knowing who's responsible, that's critical. It's designed to sow distrust, paralyze leaders, stop any unified response.
Make everyone point fingers.
Exactly. And internal sabotage hitting infrastructure, communications, or just public trust. It's incredibly effective at weakening a country from the inside without, a full-scale invasion. And the fact that the source mentions multiple possible culprits, Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, that just underlines the complexity, the deliberate confusion often used in these ops, maximize the chaos, the division.
And adding to that internal chaos, the source mentions mass poisoning and widespread strange system failures, electronic failures across Poland.
Oof.
These things, the vision says, will just fuel the growing chaos.
Okay, if we look at those through a modern threat lens, mass poisoning could mean many things, not just chemical agents, maybe contamination of water, or even mass disinformation causing panic.
Like a psychological poisoning.
Could be, and then combine that with electronic system failures. That paints a picture of critical infrastructure under attack. Imagine banks going down, air traffic control, emergency services, the power grid.
Yeah, chaos.
Huge societal stress. People lose faith in the government's ability to protect them. It just feeds the chaos, makes people more vulnerable to fear, to control. These wouldn't be random. They'd be targeted, disruptive, asymmetric attacks.
And, as if things weren't tense enough, the visionary brings up potential financial controls, sees electronic payment limits, withdrawal caps, put in place temporarily to stop people from pulling out all their cash in a panic. It's framed as, putting finances in check. There's also a quick side note about gold, its high price now, and a warning that investing at the peak could mean losses later.
Yeah, that prediction hits right at our anxieties about money, about stability when things get rough.
Yeah.
Temporary financial controls, limiting cash, or digital payments. That's definitely something governments might consider to stop bank runs or money fleeing the country in extreme situations.
Stark reminder.
It really is. Shows how fast our digital economies can be shaken. And the comment on gold, though brief, it just highlights that scramble for personal security when faith in the usual systems dips. Even safe investments have risks, especially when geopolitics gets messy. It's a very real worry in a chaotic time.
We get to something particularly grim, kind of cynical, what the source calls the refugee trap. The idea is if Poland were to actually send troops into the conflict,
Okay.
Russia might deliberately ramp up attacks on Ukraine specifically to push more refugees towards Poland. A massive wave, presented as a strategic move by Putin.
Wow. That is a chilling picture of weaponizing a humanitarian crisis. It suggests a calculated move where human suffering isn't just a byproduct, it's exploited. Not for military gain directly, but to create pressure, instability inside Poland.
Overwhelm the system.
Exactly. A huge refugee influx would strain everything, social services, housing, budgets. It could easily lead to social tension, undermine public support for getting involved militarily in the first place. It's a classic, though awful, tactic in hybrid war. Make your adversary pay a price far beyond the battlefield.
And amidst all this disruption and pressure, the visionary also sees more surveillance, increased police presence, city guards being more watchful, especially in big cities or specific areas.
Well, that usually goes hand in hand with high alerts or potential unrest, doesn't it? Increased surveillance suggests a response to all that internal chaos, the sabotage, the potential social friction we just talked about.
Tightening the screws.
It points towards tighter state control, maybe less personal freedom in the name of security. An effort to keep order, find the supposed troublemakers or saboteurs. Just adds another layer to this picture of a society under extreme pressure, where the state tries to assert control when things feel like they're breaking down.
Okay, now maybe the prediction that hits hardest, the one that really needs unpacking. The source claims Putin's plan is not to attack Poland, but to dismantle it.
Dismantle.
Yeah, politically and economically.
Yeah.
Break Poland's international standing, scare off investors, make it seem unreliable globally, and eventually use it like a pawn, a bargaining chip in bigger negotiations.
That is profoundly disturbing. It's a vision of statecraft that goes way beyond tanks and soldiers. When the visionary says dismantle politically and economically, it's talking about a strategy to undermine a nation from the inside out and from the outside in using means other than direct military force.
How would that even work?
Well, you could imagine sustained cyber attacks hitting government systems, banks, maybe even election processes to create chaos, destroy trust economically. Maybe coordinated disinformation campaigns to scare away foreign money,
Right.
mess with financial markets, maybe even subtly encourage Poles to move their own money out.
Death by 1,000 cuts almost.
Kind of. The goal isn't conquest in the old sense. It's to erode sovereignty, economic strength, international reputation. Reduce the country to a weakened state you can manipulate or trade in bigger deals. It's a very modern, nasty way to subjugate a nation without firing a shot across the border, using economic pressure, gray zone tactics to achieve strategic aims.
And that connects to an older vision this source brings up again. That Poland's borders might change. Or, even if the borders stay the same on the map, Poland becomes a country under 3 influences, 2 external, only 1 fully Polish, basically implying a loss of real sovereignty over parts of its own territory.
That idea of 3 influences, that resonates deeply with Poland's history, right? Stuck between powerful neighbors. It suggests a future where even if the country looks whole, its actual independence politically, economically is seriously weakened. Like different regions or industries fall under the control of outside powers. Poland becomes a zone where foreign interests compete, like those old spheres of influence.
So independence eroded not by invasion, but by fragmenting control.
That seems to be the implication.
And for this whole dismantling process,
Yeah.
the source insists it involves at least 3 enemies, not just 1.
Oh, wow.
It's not seen as a simple us versus them fight, but something much more complex, multi-layered.
At least 3 enemies. That really complicates the picture dramatically. It implies a situation far more dangerous, more intricate, than just facing off against one obvious adversary. It could mean, I suppose, a mix of state actors, maybe non-state groups, maybe even ideological forces working together or separately, all undermining the country.
A multi-front attack, but not necessarily military fronts.
Exactly. Highlighting extreme vulnerability, maybe isolation. Poland caught in this tangled web of rivals or competing agendas.
And finally, just briefly, the source mentions trying to figure out Trump's plan in all this, which is interesting, right? Suggests this search for clarity, for some kind of direction from big global players in these really uncertain times.
Yeah, that little mention, it really captures something very human and very geopolitical. In times like these, when everything feels shaky, alliances are questioned, people desperately want to see a plan, a strategy from the key players. Looking for Trump's plan just highlights how much weight is put on certain leaders, especially when the old rules seem blurry, and the anxiety when those plans aren't clear or seem unpredictable.
It shows how much stability feels like it hangs on what a few powerful people might decide to do.
It really does. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, maybe think about this. How do these kinds of visions, setting aside whether they predict anything accurately, how do they make you think about the wider anxieties, about security, the economy, alliances in times that feel so uncertain? The fact that these perspectives even emerge, get shared, get talked about, that itself says a lot about the collective stress, the fears maybe simmering just below the surface, especially when the usual news sources don't feel like they're telling the whole story.
Exactly. So just to recap our journey today, our source presented this really complex, dramatic picture for Poland's potential future. We talked about that worrying idea of threats becoming normal, a pretty sharp critique of NATO's effectiveness right now, and then those incredibly specific predictions. The mysterious rocket, the internal sabotage, potential money controls, the strategic refugee trap, and of course that core striking vision. Putin's plan not to attack, but to dismantle Poland politically, economically, potentially leaving it pulled between different outside powers, facing, as the source said, at least 3 enemies.
And the so what of all this? I think it's this. Forget the predicting part for a moment. This perspective shines a light on critical issues that are very real, that demand we pay attention. It shows the psychological toll of constant tension on people. It highlights how fragile international relations and alliances can be when faced with these new kinds of hybrid threats. And it points to these complex, often hidden geopolitical games being played. This source, in its own unconventional way, it kind of nudges us to look critically at the stories we get from media, from politicians, to ask ourselves, are we really being informed? Or are we maybe just being conditioned, habituated to extreme situations? It's a challenge, really, to our own thinking in this flood of information, which leaves us with a final thought, something maybe to mull over after this deep dive. In this era, we're in rising global tensions, information overload, sometimes deliberate disinformation. How do we, as people trying to stay informed, tell the difference between genuine threats, strategic games, and just the human need to find explanations, to find predictions, even from unusual places? What does the fact that these visions exist and that we feel compelled to explore them tell us about our collective anxiety, about our search for meaning when the world feels so turbulent? It's definitely something worth thinking about as you navigate the news and the narratives shaping our world.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.